Grids can be used for almost anything. They're not there to look good, although they can. Instead, they're practical. They're quick to organize, easier for humans to parse the content inside, and they're so much simpler to navigate. In the context of roads, this means more flexibility for pedestrians. It's great for orientation, tons of intersections. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about alignment and knolling, and grids, when grids are useful and when they're not. Alignment itself is core to a lot of disciplines, like orthopedics and orthodontics and ortho-visual design on the web, which is visual design on the web with ortho in front of it. But its roots, we're talking web design, its roots on screen and even on paper come from some of the earliest and most basic aspects of typography. In English or Spanish, for instance, we read from left to right. Languages like Hebrew and Arabic from right to left. The alignment of this text gives humans a consistent reference line. We know exactly where the next line is going to start. This passage can be a lot more challenging to read in English, mainly because the starting point of each line is different, but also because it's in German. But alignment isn't just about pushing text to one side. In visual design, we can align other edges of other elements. In many ways, the more we visually align things, the better they look. Don't believe it? Enter knolling, the art of placing stuff at right angles. Randomness becomes beautiful, if only we organize it. Seriously, you can have the messiest desk in the history of the world. Watch this. If you employ a simple knolling technique, things get better. But for now, how can we take this to the next level? Well, we can use grids to help us. Grids don't just mean everything is nested in its own tiny cell. We can have content span cells. Grids help us align things vertically and horizontally. And unlike graph paper, not every grid has to have the same size for every row and column. As long as we're reinforcing that horizontal and vertical alignment, the size of each of these can vary widely. So, when do we use grids in our designs? Well, sometimes starting with a grid is a good way. Some people start with guides. This is a 12-column guide. And sometimes starting with this can help us make decisions about where to place and size things, a reference. But a lot of times we don't even need that. Maybe we don't need 12 lines. We have a section, for instance. We have a container inside of that that's more narrow than the section. Isn't this technically a 3-column layout? Well, we asked a senior software engineer that same question.
Elena, is this a 3-column layout?
Yes.
It's symmetrical, but we don't need 30 vertical lines here to get the picture. But what about horizontal lines? Let's say we have an element here and an element here. By aligning these elements to a horizontal line, we're creating even visual consistency. This is a grid. In short, it helps to think of grids, especially uneven ones that aren't made of perfect squares, as guides, like in Photoshop or InDesign. Create some guides, align stuff, things look great, work done. But sometimes it's not so great to use grids. Circular or curved layouts are tough on their own. If you try to start aligning this stuff to a grid, not so great. Same with one-dimensional layouts. A lot of these involve stacking or sorting things in different widths. Centering them can look really clean, and it's not necessarily a grid. And sometimes elements of a design have different widths. Take a look at Google Images. The top section is one-dimensional. In other words, it has everything lined up going only one way. But each item has a different width based on the text inside. The other thing here is the results themselves. Notice how, because the images are inconsistent in terms of width, notice how they don't follow a grid structure. There are some interesting things going on where Google is cropping and sizing to keep the edges and the gaps similar, but you can't draw a traditional grid around this content. And you wouldn't want to, because everything has a slightly different shape, a different width. In fact, sometimes over-gridding things leads to an overly rigid result. Grids and alignment in general can be used to make things look and read a lot better. But if you're following a grid-based path in which literally everything is inside a grid, it can also make your design and your whole layout more complex. So, what's the absolute rule? The rule with grids is this: there are no right or wrong answers. If we're thinking of grids as an alignment tool, we can use them to help us create better looking and more legible layouts. It's a balance we can achieve over time. To put this in a real-world perspective, we can look at any number of print layouts. Books, magazines, newspapers. These industries have pushed forward grid-based visual design over generations. Many layouts follow this kind of alignment and structure. And grid-based layouts use these guides, these often invisible lines that organize content. And with a lot of these layouts, it's not just the alignment that we can focus on, it's the gap between these invisible cells of content. In web design, especially using tools like CSS Grid, this is referred to as the grid gap. This is the space between the columns and the space between the rows inside a grid. There are a ton of layouts on the web that do the same. Let's look at B&H's website. This whole thing is made of grids, but there's an important note here. Just because the visual layout is a grid doesn't mean it has to use CSS Grid or any specific technology to achieve the result. But what it means is that the content is organized in a visual grid. There are rows, there are columns, they both serve as guides, and they structure the content inside. A lot of the web doesn't use grids at all. Most of the modern web is built using the box model, where boxes stack on top of each other and next to each other, just like a Word document. Content flows from the top left of the page. And this is a good thing because it helps us create adaptive layouts that respond to the width of almost any device. But with modern tools like CSS Grid, we can create beautiful, structured layouts that also respond to the type of device we're using. We're going to go deeper into this later on in the course as we build out our actual site, and we'll use grid-based layouts and non-grid-based layouts, but that's it. Grids help us align and group parts of our design, and the results are functional, and they often make things more pleasing to look at. And that's an overview of grids in web layouts.